So my name's Lian. Axolotl really started off as like my own learning experience of like LLMs and sort of this Gen AI cycle of like, all right, how am I going to learn how to fine tune LLMs? Like and I'm not necessarily like a person that understands like neural networks and all of that. And so taking all of the sort of existing pieces that exist sort of in the ecosystem and saying, all right, how can I iterate quickly? How can I build a system that integrates all of the various open source data sets, open source models, and build something and iterate quickly that I can learn? And eventually, this turned into something that led to more of a no-code approach for a lot of people that sort of resonated, because a lot of people are very interested in LLMs, in fine-tuning them, and they don't necessarily like come with all of the sort of ML expertise. So first off, like Axolotl is a Hugging Face wrapper over the Hugging Face trainer. The main decision for this is like, there's Llama Mistral. There's a long list of like models that come out like every other week, and we can't be. It's hard for like I'm pretty much the like 90% maintainer of this, so I can't be like trying to write modeling code to support all of this every time something new comes out. So really it gives us a lot of out of the box like, oh, this sort of works, and we just have to figure out what are sort of the edge cases, what are the popular things that people are like techniques that they want to experiment with, and how do we just make that work for users. And that is really like the things where like, oh, if we can do that, we don't have to like try and solve everything. Yes, if someone says, trying this, maybe it doesn't work, we'll look into it, but at the end of the day, like we are indexing on the majority of users on the majority of use cases, right? And we're looking for something that basically trying to figure out what has the most impact. All right, so what are our signals? They're pretty obvious. It's like Discord, like most of the people in open source AI pretty much live in either Discord or I guess now X. A lot of our users, they sort of are either individual researchers, they are people who are like, there's a lot of people doing sort of like these more chatbot sort of fine tunes. We also have much larger users like news research, and so we get a lot of signals from that. If you pop it into the Discord and you ask questions, or if you like have requests, we'll look into it. For the most part, if like it's a hot tip, like if you have something and you want it done, just pop in the Discord and ask, and it'll probably get done in a reasonable amount of time. We find that most of the community, like, they come in, they learn, and then they sort of stick around. So like as new users funnel in, like as time has progressed, I've been able to spend a little less time in Discord, which has been nice, because eventually like, the community does come in, step up, and help. So there's a lot of things to like, going back, there's a large support matrix of things, and if we try and support and make everything and every little combination work, it just moves too slow. So for us, going back to, we focus on the functionalities that addresses the largest cohort of users. So, because we're a Hugging Face wrapper for the most part, it's like Hugging Face technically supports like PyTorch, SageMaker, TensorFlow, Flax. Majority of users just care about PyTorch. So we're throwing all of the rest of the support out the door. We're like, you can try it, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but we're not trying to like support those. Same thing, a lot of the, sort of the state-of-the-art techniques are built on modern versions of like PyTorch or Triton, or things that require, for the most part, up-to-date versions of PyTorch. So we're throwing out older, minor versions of PyTorch even. And then in this Gen AI cycle, it's like we're all like really working with sort of, causal language models. So we're throwing out like, sequence series, sort of like T5 support, those sorts of models, fill in the middle, those sorts of things. So there are a lot of supported techniques. PEF, you have LoRA, LoRA plus, DOR. There's a lot of things just in PEF alone. There's layer freezings. You can experiment with optimizers, FSDP versus like deep speed. There's a lot of knobs to spin, and users want to spin those knobs. They're like, what can I try? How do I, get them minimize the amount of VRAM? Those sorts of things. And obviously those sorts of things like explodes the possible like space that we have to support. But at the same time, when you're a user, there are obviously things that probably aren't going to work. But as a user, as an end user, you don't necessarily know that those don't work. So what we do is we add a lot of validation. Because sometimes, you're 20 minutes in, you're an hour in, it fails, or, because it just takes that long to load the model sometimes, like if you're using 4 or 5B. But you want to know that, hey, this just straight up isn't going to work. So we have a lot of, validation. There's a lot of things we know are not composable. We know a lot of things are break. We just say straight up, no, this isn't going to work. Try something else. There are a lot of things, for example, like things that probably doesn't work is activation checkpointing with layer freezing. If you don't use non-reentrant activation checkpointing, that's not going to work. So those are also things that we can sort of if you're not specifying that, we can sort of heal the configurations for you and say, we'll just set that for you, right? And also there's this network effect, right? So people come in, they submit issues, this doesn't seem to work. We can dig into it, figure out, is this a problem that we can solve? Is this an upstream problem that we can solve? Is this a big upstream problem that somebody else is going to have to solve? And if that's the case, we simply just, we'll add warnings. We'll say, no, this isn't going to work, and maybe come back to it another day. So we have a lot of, that network effect of what works and what doesn't work. So relying on Hugging Face, there's a lot of upstream dependencies. It's like accelerate, trainer, PEF, bits and bytes, and a bunch of other things. And as anybody who's ever dealt with dependencies, one day it may work, next day it may not, right? But AI moves fast, and all of these new architectures and techniques that come out, and all of these libraries, they do their best to implement all of these building blocks that we use on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes things, sometimes the interfaces change, and it's nobody's fault. It's just that we're all moving fast. We're all trying to break things. So as maintainers, the best thing is really to have direct comms with your upstream dependencies. That way you can collaborate and work sort of hand in hand to identify and tackle these issues. This next one might be a bit controversial, but we pin everything. I know some people like to use greater than or equal to blah, blah for their versioning. We find that oftentimes, when we do this, things will break unexpectedly. And the way we work around this is we just have a nightly CI, and we just replace all of the pinned versions and point it to upstream main, and then run all of our CI against upstream main. So what this does is we get an early signal if something's broken, but there's been a couple cases where we can actually find bugs upstream and get that resolved as well. Let's see. So why low code or no code? If you don't have to think about the modeling code and the implementation, this gives you all of this newfound time. To work on high quality data sets. So you see with Llama Storm, I think these were the guys that won the NeurIPS Efficiency Challenge last year. They built that. They were able to just work on curating data sets NagPy Align. These are all data set driven, high quality state-of-the-art models, Hermes from News, and then even vertical specific or domain specific models like Allo and Smiley Llama. Thanks for listening. Here's a project. We're always looking for more core contributors. So, and if there's any questions, feel free to find me later.